This is Pastor, an F-rank anime lover who belongs to a real-life guild named Liar's Trap. Here he's the lowest rank of all Awakened members, people with very special abilities. As such, he's basically useless when they raid dungeons, so he spends most of his time watching anime recaps. But luckily for Pastor, he's now gained a brand new ability to separate him from the rest of the F-rank Awakened. The ability? A so-called real hypnosis app. That's why he has not watched anime lately, as he's researching his brand new power. However, today, he gets randomly bonked on the head. As he turns around, he discovers that the culprit is a red head-bong shell with whale-like personalities. She is Scarrate, a woman with tremendous power, literally one of the strongest members around. It's further revealed that she's an S-class Awakened, part of the Rate family, renowned due to their fire-bending powers. Apparently, the two have been friends for well over 20 years, but she tells others that they only know each other a little bit. Anyways, due to her crazy talent, she's risen to become the team leader of Team 1. Thus, after bonking him, she pulls on his ear, angrily asking why an F-rank like him is not working, as he looks like he's busy taking a break. As she berates him, her eyes quickly shift to his phone as our boy looks like he's watching some sussy material. Meanwhile, as she snatches the phone, Pastor is too busy trying to make excuses, so he doesn't even notice the trouble he's about to be in. Eventually, she pipes up and asks him if he's reading a webtoon. It was at this moment that Pastor knew he would need some holy water to get out of his dilemma. He then begins to freak out as he realizes that his weirdest secrets is about to be revealed. Regardless, Scar continues to scroll through his phone, only for her to stop as she begins cracking up. Suddenly, she turns his phone straight at him, revealing Pastor's secret of also being into sussy anime, as one of the scenes is a man cosplaying a jackhammer. If you look closely enough, it's as if he's watching King anime recaps. Anyways, unfortunately for him, she hysterically laughs so hard that everyone inside the headquarters have now shifted their attention to the two. As such, the boys begin to make fun of him, while the girls are not amused as they quickly want to report him. Now with him entirely exposed, his work life is now ruined, but at least he gets his phone back from Scar. She then proceeds to walk away while simultaneously waving him off and teasing him to have fun with his app. If I were him, I would jump out that window ASAP, but instead he begins to grimace with anger. He then channeled his anger through to his fingertips as he thinks to himself that she's made a major mistake. Pastor then claims that tonight will be the night he'll make her his fallen assistant. Fast forward to the evening where it's revealed that Pastor has actually struck as he's made it inside her apartment. There he proceeds to activate his plan of entering not only her apartment but also deep inside her avocado. As he continues on with his plan, he begins to insult her, claiming that she only got promoted due to the size of the watermelon she was growing. Of course, she claims that it isn't true, while under the effects of his hypnosis spell. Eventually, he finds her weak spot and, well, the rest was history. After the quick play date, Pastor checks his phone only to discover that it's way past late for these boomers. He then looks behind him to check on Scar, but she's still knocked out due to being in a state of utter bliss. Nevertheless, he whips out his phone to find the nearest subway, only for him to realize that something is terribly off. Pastor then looks back in disbelief as his app was stuck on the loading screen, so there's no way his app could have worked. Thus, Pastor begins sweating more than I do on the toilet, as his question of how she got hypnotized is left unanswered. That's right, guys, our boy is dense since he won her over with consent. The next morning, Pastor finds himself in front of the genius app creator, where he explains what happened last night. He tells the creator, known as Eam, that he accidentally hypnotized someone with her app. So Eam asks who exactly did he hypnotize. Thus, he reveals that it was actually Scarrate. However, after finding out more details about his encounter, she gets annoyed, having found out that he used it for sussy back activities. Nonetheless, since Eam is part of the guild who also happens to be the greatest inventor of all time, she decides to do him a favor. Within seconds, she just looks at the phone and the app was seemingly fixed as she's a true programmer. As such, she hands the phone back, explaining that due to an error, the fake and real hypnosis app were accidentally linked together. Now realizing that the real app was fake the entire time, he calls her bluff, causing her to spit the entire drink she was drinking. Pastor then begins to nervously piece everything together as it dawns on him that during his escapades with Scar last night, she was actually aware the entire time. As such, he tells Eam that he's about to go crazy as she bamboozled this dumb and dense F-rank member. A flashback of last night then occurs, showcasing all the weird things he made Scar do, unaware she was actually not hypnotized. Instead, she played along the entire time without a single hesitation to any of his demands. Nonetheless, he snaps back to reality, where he begins to scream at Eam as he knows his life is now over. As stunned as he is, he starts to list off every bad scenario that's about to happen to him to Eam. Unfortunately for Pastor, he's now become too much to handle for Eam, so she hits the emergency button. In an instant, he gets ejected out of the room while Eam also panics as she's now exposed for giving away a failed ability to a guild member. Regardless, after getting ejected out of the room, Pastor swiftly runs away as it is now his only course of action. He then looks back down at his phone with his face stuck in deep regret. There's nothing much he can do now, except he begins to think he was set up the entire time. Unfortunately for him, he had suddenly tripped by an unknown figure. It's then revealed that it was none other than herself, Scar, impeding his chances for escape. As he looks up angrily, not knowing who it was, all he can hear is Scar reminding him that running inside guild headquarters is prohibited. Now frozen in fear, due to Scar being an S-rank member, all he can think of is how screwed he's about to be. As such, he starts to imagine that today will be his last day to grace the world of anime. Luckily for him, he's not finished instantly, as she unexpectedly just gets close to him, equipped with whale watermelons. However, things begin to heat up as she grabs his tie and asks Star Asu lookalike what he's doing here so early. The turntables then turn as she pesters him by asking if he's lurking around this early to meet another girl. Pastor denies it, of course, as he claims he's just here early for work. Scar is satisfied with his answer, so while she thinks of what to ask next, Pastor plans to escape as soon as she looks away. Eventually, she turns around, exclaiming out loud that she's stupid for expecting something from him. Thus, she insults him for being pathetic, and continues by ranting how he's probably here trying to gain a promotion by wandering around. However, she turns back and laughs at the thought of him being promoted, so instead, she offers him to be her work slave. Upon hearing of all this, Pastor has to try his hardest to hold himself back, but then he somehow thinks to himself that Scar might not have realized she was not hypnotized. Nonetheless, Scar continues by saying that she can help him in more ways than one and drops hints that it might be possible for him to become part of the Rate family. She then gets happily distracted as she daydreams of the two having kids together once they get married. Nevertheless, our Chad decides to take the opportunity to whip out his app to try and attempt to hypnotize her, totally aloof to the fact that she might have liked him the entire time. He then orders her to look at his phone while he calls her a silly little girl. Pastor then leans closer to her, demanding her to become an idiot that can only make weird sounds. With such an awkward request at work, she somehow goes through with it, as her eyes begin to be filled with love. Scar then makes the weird noises, so she calls back to Pastor, now calling him Master. Suddenly, they hear multiple footsteps barging in as the rest of the guild members begin to arrive for work in the morning. But this isn't enough for him, so he calls out another command to Scar. This time, he orders her to attempt to cosplay Invisible Girl with her clothes. Originally shocked with his crazy request, she's unable to move, so Pastor tells her that if she's feeling embarrassed, she can start with her coat. He then threatens her by claiming that he'll expose their activities last night as an S rank was somehow controlled by a lowly F rank. To his surprise, she actually goes through with his command, even looking joyful while doing so. She started off with her coat and moved quickly to the rest of her fashion out like boots. He then stood there shocked, unable to believe that he's actually watching Scar attempt to remove her last piece. At the same time, he begins to hear the sounds of his workmates closing in, so he folds and starts screaming at her that he's just joking. However, she didn't stop as she actually went through and completed his quest. Moreover, upon completion of his order, he witnessed how embarrassed she was, so he finally realized that she was faking being hypnotized the entire time. The rest of their guild members then walked into the building. Luckily, the two escaped from the hallway last second. The girls then get confused as they thought they heard some kind of lightning. It turns out that our boy has some kind of powers like the Flash, so he was able to save her in her invisible form from the rest. However, he finds that Scar is in some weird sticky state, looking like as if she found out what true pulled pork tastes like. Meanwhile, Pastor, known as Rabbit, begins to explain his ability. He named his special ability Rabbit Burrow, allowing him to teleport himself and any object he's in contact with as particles of light. It's also revealed that he's been trying to hide his ability this entire time, but today is the first exception he'll make, as Scar would have been exposed. Meanwhile, Scar is still in some kind of love-like state, but she's able to finally sit up. Simultaneously, our dense Rabbit is busy attempting to solve this mystery as he's unable to figure out that she likes him. This is one of the only times that I would recommend our main character to stop using his brain, but to use his wood instead since he's mega dumb. Still dumbfounded, he begins to think back to their old days of her always bullying him. It turns out during the entire 20 years of knowing each other, she always pestered him and beat him up. No matter what day it was, Scar was always somehow able to find him. She picked on him for years, even up to the day he was demoted to guild headquarters. But today, Rabbit has finally had enough, as today will be the last day she'll ever mess with him. As such, he grabs her hand and nods softly. He then proceeded to grab her other one, as she gets smashed onto the wall. All his pent-up anger throughout the decades then begin to be unleashed, as he ends up sending her through a portal to another dimension. Rabbit then angrily shouts, claiming that she ruined every single one of his relationships with girls. But right before he transforms into a jackhammer for the avocado, Scar begins to giggle. Before he could investigate further, his phone rings as he gets an urgent message calling him to the monitoring room. As such, he quickly equips all his armor back on and instantly heads out. Meanwhile, Scar gets up, totally frustrated that he's abruptly leaving before her avocado could even get filled by Milkman. Thus, she looks on sad that she never got what she wanted.